We are giving them a roadmap. We are giving them a plan. The number one most important factor for longevity, quality of life is that you are investing in the most valuable asset that you have, which is your health.
We've been taught to chase health by doing more workouts, more discipline, more intensity. And for a lot of people, that's exactly what's holding them back. This episode centers on 3 ideas: why effort alone can't overcome poor lifestyle and recovery choices, how an integrated approach to health changes outcomes completely, and how longevity is built through systems, not motivation. This is one of those conversations that quietly reframes how you think about your health. And if this conversation resonates with you, simply subscribing to the channel is the easiest and free way to support us. Thank you and enjoy the show. All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Health Movement Podcast. I'm Derek, your host, teacher of over 20 years and a certified personal trainer. I have an awesome guest with us today, and I normally say we're not doctors, so please, before you do anything, check with your doctor, but today we actually happen to have one, but still check with your own doctor first of all before anything. But without any further ado, I have with us today Dr. Ryan Greene, who is an osteopathic physician, entrepreneur who is redefining the preventative healthcare and creator of the Monarch Athletic Club. Dr. Greene, thank you so much for joining us today.
Good morning. Thank you. You did well. That was good.
The third or fourth time, no one's going to know because I cut it out.
Yeah, it's all good.
I have to say, selfishly, I'm very excited for this conversation because I was a collegiate athlete, and fitness and being active has been part of my whole life, and I've been dealing with these lingering issues for a while now. And just to pick your brain for a little bit is exciting here, and that's
great.
But before I selfishly ask those questions, can you tell us a little bit about what got you started in this field, and what was that?
Yeah. So high level, I'll do kind of how we got here and my journey, which will feed into what we're doing with Monarch. So I did my undergrad in exercise physiology, immunology, and then a master's in ex-phys, immunology, and human nutrition. As I was going through training, we had a talk one time from a DO, and his perspective was interesting because he was basically licensed to do everything an MD could do. And it seemed like having a greater skill set in terms of what I was licensed to actually practice would be better than just the traditional MD path. But I didn't know the DO world really existed. Ultimately, I went to a school in Denver, Colorado, which was amazing. It really changed my life because it got me out of the Midwest. I was at University of Illinois. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, and life in the Midwest just never really resonated because it was like everything stays the same. The life cycle continues, and people grow up, they go to school, they come back, it repeats, and something was pulling me away. Once I got into training, I realized the only thing in medicine that resonated was the surgical space, because you could see a problem, you could fix a problem, and it wasn't just managing conditions with pills and things like that. But once you get into residency and realize the overwhelming amount of your time is spent with, not high performing individuals or athletes who I really wanted to work with, it was folks who didn't want to be in a bad spot, but ultimately didn't have the education, the resources, or something like that to actually make life changes. Maybe it was just time meeting with a physician. You have 5 to 7 minutes and you have to either decide, is it surgery or not surgery? I really had a crisis of conscience. And so the other beautiful aspect of the residency training model, and even med school, is you get to kind of see what your future is going to look like through the life of your attending surgeons. And it was high stress, little sleep, nothing that was in alignment with what I believed and what you probably believe is a truly healthy lifestyle. But once you're in medical school and residency, the hard part is becoming an entrepreneur is not really a path, because you're so deep in debt. Your earning years are so delayed because you've done, undergrad, med school, and then, by the time you're done, you're in your early 30s, mid 30s. But I got to the point where I had to appreciate that if I was going to do something for the rest of my life, it needed to be in alignment with like what I believed in my soul was a healthy way to live. And it wasn't going to be in the medical space. So when I was at Mayo Clinic doing my fellowship, I was looking at professional athletes, and this was, 2015, 2016. it was kind of the time that LeBron, Derrick Henry, all these other guys were talking about how much money they spend on recovery. And, it started to generate thoughts in my head, which was like, all right, if a professional athlete is paying this much money to have a team of people to tell them literally to do every single thing in their life to perform at a high level, what chance do general population individuals and myself included have to get anywhere near that level of performance that we would consider like peak human performance if we didn't have a team working for us as well? And that started the wheels turning for me. What would a model look like that allowed someone to do everything they needed to do, have access to all they need to allow their body to function at the highest possible level? I do not believe your body wants to break down. There are physics principles that say a system should be able to live forever as long as you provide it with all the nutrients in the environment that is appropriate. We just compound bad decisions over long periods of time, and eventually we run out of runway, so to speak. So um, I had an opportunity. The universe, in its infinite wisdom, connected me to my now business partners who are not in the health space. They're just in hospitality, but health focused individuals. And they wanted to create kind of a higher end training concept. I was able to present what I thought would be a model of healthcare for the future. And we were able to blend kind of the health and hospitality. And they had the financial resources. I had the idea. And before you know it, we have Monarch Athletic Club. It opened literally 6 years ago this week in
Oh,
West
wow.
Hollywood. And now we have 3 clubs and we have 4 more in the pipeline that'll open over the next 2 to 3 years. And the simplest thing that I can say about the concept is it's not complex. I call it a symphony of simple. It's, resources, guidance, multidisciplinary, integrated health and wellness team that's essentially building a program and communicating on a regular basis on your behalf. The one thing we cannot control is your effort because you have to do something to get to where you want to go. Any trainer, anyone listening who's in the health and wellness space recognizes like you are not making someone stronger. I am not healing someone's diabetes or heart disease. We are guiding people. We are giving them a roadmap. We are giving them a plan. We can help them along with accountability or, whatever that is, support in a movement practice. But at the end of the day, it's the individual's body that has to adapt. It has to make the change. And if you're not doing simple things consistently, we're going to continue to fall back to step one because the human body is an energy conserving vessel. It doesn't want to spend more energy than it has to. And until we make those simple decisions part of our routine, the fabric of our existence, we'll kind of stay at whatever operating level we arrived at before we thought about making a change. So for us, um, it's movement, it's medicine, it's nutrition, it's rehab and recovery. And the other big part is community. Our clubs are not designed to follow the legacy fitness model where it's 10,000 members and you hope 70 to 80% of the people never use it. That's not what we want. We want smaller clubs, more of them, so that you have that sense of community because, if you believe the Harvard happiness study, which I do, the number one most important factor for longevity, quality of life is the strength of your relationships. And when it comes to health, it's a pretty vulnerable topic. And if you don't feel like you can actually communicate with the people that are there to help you, there's a mismatch because what you actually need versus what is being said or what they perceive may not be aligned. So we wanted to create a sense of community. And so far, so good. Our members on the surface are paying a premium price point, but from a value standpoint, if you factor in they can have a trainer every day, a physical therapist every day, concierge medicine, a nutritionist, beautiful spaces with saunas, cold plunges, hyperbaric, all the recovery modalities. Like just think about what people are paying, a la carte, and you put that all together and it's actually a massive value. But we've spent the last 30, 40 years, with, high or what is it? High value, low cost concepts where people are like, am I paying $10 a month for Planet Fitness? Am I paying $50 a month for 24 hour? You're like, okay, I understand the cost part, but like, what are you actually getting out of it? What are your outcomes? Are you sticking with it? So we wanted to solve a couple things there, and also recognize like an investment is necessary, but it doesn't have to be significant in terms of cost. And ultimately, you are investing in the most valuable asset that you have, which is your health, and then ultimately, hopefully, time added on and quality to your life.
Well, you think about it too in terms of what, like, I'm in Massachusetts, and
Yeah.
some of the areas in the state are pretty affluent, and the amount of money people spend on their cars per month is through the roof, but they don't want to spend even 50 bucks at the gym. They want 15 because 50 sounds too
Right.
much. But they're
Right.
willing to spend all this stuff on a car that's gonna, 5 years later they just buy a new one. Um,
Totally.
Everything you listed there sounds like heaven. Like, when I picture heaven, it's like, all right, here's my fitness, here's the nutritionist, here's all the recovery stuff. When I need help with something, I can ask this person this, I can ask this person. Like, that sounds like the perfect model. And I think I didn't want to tell you this, but I talked to all your clients and they don't want this in California anymore. They want you to move it to Massachusetts. No,
Yeah. Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
I,
No,
I
hey, it's funny is like we've had the same discussions, because LA is a great spot to prove concept. It's a
yeah,
very fitness focused space. There's 1,000, you know, training concepts from F45 to berries. And um, it seems like every day there's a hit concept that's coming out, or nowadays there's a new Pilates concept that's coming out. And I believe movement is absolutely important. But, if you look at the data, like, you can't just do one type of training in perpetuity. Like, you need to understand, what are your goals? What's your capacity? Can you actually do these types of training? Is there some re-education that needs to be, implemented? Not speaking against any other modality. I think they're all valuable, but yeah, for the last 30 years, people just like have to tie their wagon to this one horse. And they're like, I do this, I do CrossFit, I do blah, blah, blah. And my perspective is like, you need to do all of it. Like, you need to pay
yeah.
attention to all these things, right? Like, your body is an orchestra. It's, if all the parts aren't playing well together, you don't make beautiful music. So you can't just focus on one thing. And until, we emerged, I don't know if there's been a concept that allows, for that comprehensive assessment and ultimately intervention in all aspects of what I believe is a reasonable health program.
I since I've started the show, I've been fortunate enough to talk to a lot of people in all aspects of the space. And I usually try to find people that we can get all these different perspectives. And you're right. I haven't seen anything where all of this is incorporated into one thing where people can come in and they get these experts in all aspects. So what's the
Mhm.
actually, I thought of, when you're talking about this, obviously a limited number of people, you don't want 10,000 people at a club. Like, that's not the purpose. Do people have to apply to this? Where you sit down and meet with them and see if they're a good fit?
No, we're pretty transparent. I don't align with concepts where you can go to their website and then it's a little opaque in terms of what are you actually going to have to pay, and then it's an apply now type thing. Like, on our website it says apply now, but we're very transparent with our pricing and what you get with each membership tier, of which we have four. Um, we have only had one person who's ever joined the club that, while they are going through an onboarding process, and we have a proprietary process where they're meeting with medical, physical therapy, strength and conditioning, nutrition, and then we call it Monarch Mind. It's our mental health vertical, which is a newer component of the ecosystem. We've only had one person where, when they were coming through, I had to, unfortunately say, like, hey, I don't think we are going to be the solution for you based on what you need. And beyond that, truth be told, like, anyone who comes in, depending on where you're at, we have a team of professionals that can adapt. And, sometimes people come in and think they're going to be using training all the time. And once they go through the PT evaluation, they realize, wow, like, I do not move well. Like, I do not
Yeah.
have the capacity to, participate in a traditional strength and conditioning program. And fortunately, we hire physical therapists that are typically also CSCS, so they can kind of function in a hybrid capacity. So,
What's
they may
CSCS?
CSCS is a certified strength and conditioning specialist. So it's a master's degree level certification. Um, Although there's plenty of great trainers, yourself included, who may not have a CSCS, but if you wanted to set like a bar of like what
Oh, yeah,
is
yeah,
required
absolutely.
to participate, that's typically what we look for, excuse me. But having a physical therapist that has that acumen is helpful, because then some people can come in and we can still put them through a movement program, but they'll be working with someone who also has that level of a DPT, who can focus and pay a little bit more attention and have a skill set that exceeds what a traditional strength and conditioning coach would have. And sometimes that's the path for people, as we explain, hey, like, we need to build, base capacities, base functionalities here with you, or you have an issue that you may not have even known that we need to address before we can push you into a full strength and conditioning program. And we're not going to lie to people. We're not just going to do something because that's not what they want to hear. If that leads to a separation, so be it. To be honest, they'll probably come back at some point because the value of what we offer is enormous. But we're very adamant on everyone goes through the onboarding steps as we've designed them, because it allows us to create a more intelligent program based on where they're at and then where they want to go. Because I would say 99% of the people who come in want to build muscle, burn fat, and improve their energy levels. And they assume if they just exercise enough, all those things are going to be fixed. When in actuality, like, it's usually lifestyle stuff. Perhaps it's metabolic, you know, inflammation, hormones, whatever. And when you present people with information and you have experts explaining exactly why it's important, now all of a sudden, like, buy-in becomes a little bit easier versus just saying, "Oh, you probably don't sleep enough," or, whatever that is. So, um, yeah, we're not gatekeepers in terms of, I don't want to stop someone from trying to pursue a higher quality of life and better
Yeah.
health simply because, like, on paper there's some things that don't look right. I believe any program that's worth its salt should be able to adapt to the individual that's coming in. Same thing when you go to a hospital. Like, I don't get to choose how much you've busted yourself up. What I have to do is take what you've given me and figure out a path to get you to where we need you to go.
But I imagine the people too who are coming to Monarch are like-minded to you in the people I imagine working there, where it's not a box gym. It's a, it's a whole holistic approach to how to improve health. So I would imagine they know that coming in.
Yeah, I'd say most do, but I think from a concept standpoint, on the surface, a lot of people are coming in because they've never seen a concept where you pay a flat fee and you can use a trainer every day or a physical therapist every day.
Yeah.
So they assume that, that's just going to be their route. And I'd say for the majority of people, like, that's true. They may not, do some of the things they thought they would do or have done at other, group fitness concepts, because we can show them, like, you don't know how to squat. You do not know how to hinge. You're pushing, you're pulling, like, you're limited in shoulder mobility and range of motion. You can't be doing super heavy, push presses when you don't have the capacity to do that. So we need to teach you to get back there. And sometimes people get frustrated because they feel like it's too remedial. But at the end of the day, we're going to, fall back on an evidence-based approach and say, like, we don't want you to get hurt. We want you to get better. And sometimes you need to contract to expand. Like, you need to take some steps back so that you can take more steps forward. Otherwise, you're just going to continue to run into the same blocks that led you to us in the first place.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned the getting the fundamentals down, because I coached a lot of youth sports, and when I was coaching t-ball and baseball for my son, we try to do T-work, and the kids are like, "Well, I'm not in T-ball anymore. Why
Yeah.
am I doing this?" And then you show them a clip of the professionals who are
Yeah.
doing T-work every day, and it's like, those are seem like, I'm a huge Kobe Bryant fan, and
Yeah.
he would spend hours on just the fundamentals,
Totally.
and that's how you build that.
Yeah.
Um, this From everything you said at the beginning and all the stuff you were looking for, you're completely spot on when you say it seemed like the universe is, it just aligned with what you're hoping for.
Yeah.
How did you get in touch with the business partners? Was this a friendship you
Yeah.
had or connections?
Yeah, it's relationships. Relationships are everything. So one of my best friends growing up in Chicago was a professional athlete. He lived in LA. His trainer was also training my business partners at a concept that's close to us here in LA called Unbreakable, which at that time it was kind of like the space that all pro athletes went to and MMA guys went to, and people were paying a ton of money for personal training, but there wasn't really anything else. And my buddy was talking about thinking, he and some of his clients were going to start kind of like a higher end training concept, and we happened to have a conversation. I was like, that's cool, but I think we've exhausted how many different gym concepts can exist. What we really need
Yes.
is something that will help carry people for decades, not just 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. And this was 2016 when we had this conversation. So pre-pandemic, pre this radical
Oh,
shift where people were now all of a sudden forced to face the mortality of, man, if a virus comes through here and I'm not in good condition, like it could destroy me. So I think we were definitely early into the space, but now you're seeing legacy concepts like Lifetime and Equinox recognizing, you know, access to fitness equipment alone is no longer going to be satisfactory. Like people want to know, am I getting better? What is my blood work telling me? How do I get access to hormone optimization, peptides, all that other kind of stuff? So you're starting to see these other groups try to like piece things together. For us, it's been in our DNA from the beginning, which is like every aspect of what we would consider a holistic health model. That's been our program from day one. So I was able to pitch this idea to them. They believed in the model, and truthfully took a flyer and said, if you're willing to move out here and help us build this, we have some capital to get things started. And the rest is history.
yeah. How do you say no to something like that? Like that's
You say
definitely
you say no because you're 250 grand in debt and you're leaving, you know, guaranteed income as a physician to go be an entrepreneur and work in a startup. And I had to hustle, man. I probably had 4, 5, 6 things going on all at once just so I could pay my bills. I didn't take a salary for the first 5 years of our existence because like it just wasn't possible.
yeah.
So, if you don't have that hustle mindset and then, the passion to recognize like, you got to do what you need to do to keep your baby alive. Like, for most physicians coming out, that debt burden and the fact that you're 10 earning years behind everyone who graduated college with you is tough. That's why you don't see too many physician entrepreneurs, because the system, basically pushes you into having to stay within the traditional medical model. So,
I get what you're saying. And it's yeah, it's tough to do, but you don't want to go 20 years later and then look back and you're like, I had Forrest Griffin on the show from
mm,
UFC a
yeah,
while back, and he was telling a story how he got onto the Ultimate Fighter, was gonna get on the plane, and at the last minute, he's like, "I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it." And he called to tell them that he wasn't gonna do it, and Dana White called him and convinced him. And he said, "I'd rather live to regret the choices I make than the ones I don't make." And it's
totally.
stuck with me, and it's
Yeah,
that's
same thing.
absolutely it.
Yeah,
That's absolutely it. So what's the process look like when somebody new comes? That's got to be fun for you guys because everything is a new puzzle you gotta figure out.
yeah,
Uh, and that must keep it from getting not repetitive or boring, but everybody's different. Everybody needs something
totally.
different. And they all start at different places. So what's that initial process look like?
Yeah.
The first step.
Yeah. So every member, when they join, they meet with medical first, history, physical, med, supplements. Again, people aren't coming to us in an urgent sick state. So it's when like we talk about the medical aspect, it's a lot more fun because I'm not dealing with people that are in, you know, dire straits and literally just like make me feel better. So we go through kind of a lifestyle assessment. How do you eat? How do you sleep? How much water do you drink? How much protein do you get? Body composition. We either use InBody or Staiku. DEXA would be awesome. It's just a space cost and also like a frequency issue, how many DEXAs you can do throughout the year. So we use other modalities for body composition, and then we do blood work. Everyone gets blood work every 3 months. It's covered by your insurance. We're not following the trends right now where it's how many biomarkers can you actually get assessed? Because, the more markers you get, the more things you're going to find that are in wrong. And then people feel like they're not making progress. We really hone in on what I would consider like the critical metabolic biomarkers.
What are those critical ones?
Yeah. So, obviously, like liver, kidney, thyroid, just major organ systems. We do an advanced cardiovascular disease risk panel, including ApoB, lipoprotein little a, so modifiable and genetic. Full hormone panels for males and females, including IGF-1, because growth hormone is something that should absolutely be addressed in all people and hasn't, because we've simply been afraid of like what happens if you abuse growth hormone and cancer risk. But there's a ton of data coming out now that demonstrates, similar to testosterone, if you have suboptimal growth hormone, sleep is impacted, recovery is impacted, and truthfully, your morbidity and mortality risk kind of goes up. It's a U-shaped curve, which is a conversation for a different podcast. But markers of inflammation, adrenal function, critical vitamins and nutrients, vitamin D, ferritin, things like that. And I can pretty much tell people with certainty, like if you can align all those things and get those into an optimal range, and homocysteine as well. If all of those things are within optimal range, I haven't had anyone tell me they do not feel great, great energy, great sleep, sexual performance, physical performance, mental performance is all better. So that's typically what we start with. We have the ability to do one-offs if someone needs it, because we are considered a medical facility, so it can fall within our purview.
Oh,
But
nice.
that's the base panel, and then from there, we meet with the patient again, the member, and we're pretty supplement minimalists, I would say, other than protein, creatine, and vitamin D. Like, there's not too many things that I think are beneficial. I mean, maybe there's a season where you might need something, but we have so many people who come in on 5, 10, 15 supplements that they've been on forever, and they don't really know if they're working or why they're taking them. They just were told that they should. So being able to provide objective data with their lifestyle program has been really helpful. And then beyond that, after they meet with medical, they meet with physical therapy, because our PT team wants to make sure they're safe to move. And then they do a 2-day strength and conditioning assessment. Day one's just all movement patterns. And then we take them through a CARS program, controlled articular rotations, help them understand head to toe, what should they be feeling, what should they do before every strength and conditioning session to make sure they're checking in with their body and understanding, how am I moving today? How do I feel? And then day 2 is performance, push-up test, pull-up test, or ring rows, grip strength, force plates, VO2 submax, technically. And then from there, sharing the data with the people, putting, all the other pieces together, aligning what we see with what their goals are, and setting reasonable, KPI metrics that we check in on every 3 to 4 months, so that we can hopefully show people that, health progress isn't simply about aesthetics. Like, there's other things that you need to pay attention to. And, Peter Attia has made a career on, VO2 max, bar hang, grip strength. And, we've done all those things since day one. So we wanted to include a lot of evidence-based metrics in there, as well as, some of the more subjective stuff. And then once they go through that onboarding process, which typically takes about a week, a program is built. They can use the team every day or as often as they want. And we check in every quarter just to hopefully make sure they're trending towards what they want. And, again, not everyone makes a ton of progress every quarter. And, we also feel we have a value proposition, which is like, you get to know our team extremely well. Our clubs are not that big, and it gives us an opportunity to have vulnerable discussions with people and just be like, what's working, what's not, why did your nutrition program not work? I forgot to meet with the nutritionist. So, like, we can check in and help people realize, like, this is the long game. Like you shouldn't necessarily be discouraged if all of your issues weren't fixed in 90 days. Like some of these things might take longer, or, you know, maybe you got sick or work got busy and you just didn't have as much time as you thought you would. Okay, how can we recommit to whatever we need to focus on for the next quarter?
Yeah. And I like how you break it up quarterly. And, if you have someone come in who's new to everything, they're not going to build the habits in 90 days that hit all these different aspects. So maybe they have some bad habits too that they have to work to,
Yeah.
to break, and then in time build these new ones. So that sounds like an incredible process. I'm actually incredibly jealous you guys are out in California, because it sounds. I have friends out in California, and I cannot wait to see if they're. How far away from San Diego are you guys? Is it just up in
Uh,
LA?
yeah,
So like
too
an
too
hour?
too far, but we're looking at
Uh,
a spot down in Del Mar, so we'll hopefully be
okay.
there within the next few years. We are opening a spot in Boston that's about 2 to 3 years out, so we'll be there relatively soon, I suppose.
Wow. All right.
Yeah.
All right. I'm like 45 minutes to an hour west of Boston, but I would still, at the very least, love to come check that out sometime.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
exciting.
Yeah.
So they go through that process.
Yep.
And I like how it's small, because when you get to know somebody personally on that level, the success, financially, you want the business to do well and all that piece of it. But if you're not helping people progress, then it kind of feels empty. But you get to see on
Yep.
a personal level the growth that goes through and happens.
Correct. Yeah. And like the thing in LA, which is I find it funny, is everyone who comes in here says they have the best whatever. When we're like, "Who's your cardiologist?" Like, "I have the best cardiologist." I'm like, "What does that mean?" And I'm like, or like, whatever. And so, part of our success is hiring really good people. Like, are they the best trainers? Like, I don't even know what that necessarily means, but I know that they're good people and they care and they pay attention, and we take a lot of time to educate them and train them to understand, like, you know you could work with 6 different people every single day for 5 days in a row. You need to understand how to look at a program, how to understand their modifications that have been built in by physical therapy or whatever, because you're not just working with the same roster over and over and over again. Like, and you have to be a coach that can critically think, because someone comes in and says, "I played 4 hours of tennis yesterday and my body's destroyed." In a perfect world, you'd be like, "All right, today's a recovery day." And then they come in and they
Yeah.
go, "No, today is a lifting day because I want to lift." And you're like, "All right, we're going to have to modify some things because, you know, if you were a professional athlete, it wouldn't be a question. But we have professionals who are just like, this is my time and this is what I'm doing." And so, we have to make sure we hire the right people that have, the communication skills and the people skills to also like tell people no sometimes. We get a lot of people
Yeah.
who come in and, their programs are built out for 5 days a week, 6 days a week, and like conditioning is a part of that. And they'll come in and be like, "I don't want to do conditioning today." And you're just like, you can't just lift heavy 5 days in a row. Like you have to,
Yeah,
what I'm saying?
exactly.
Like, so how can we get you to buy into this? And so the people that we find, like that's an extremely important aspect as well.
The understanding piece and getting people to learn, and finding ones that are open-minded and willing to learn. And you mentioned the best, and there's so many people who are like, "Oh, I've been lifting this way for 20 years. Like this works." And you're like, "Well, okay, a little, but you can't
Right.
move your shoulder. You can't move your hand over your head without without severe
Totally.
pain in your shoulder. Something's
Totally.
wrong."
Yeah.
So for people listening who aren't in California, do you have maybe a couple things that they can do, if they're looking to improve overall general health?
Yeah. I mean, from a lifestyle standpoint, I'll share some things that, like, it's not considered medical advice. It's just lifestyle. Right. And
Yeah.
we know that minimum movement standard, 150 minutes of moderate to high intensity activity per week. That's the World Health Organization guideline. Within that, 2 to 3 days of resistance training. What does moderate intensity look like? It's different for everyone. You call it zone 2, zone 3. Ultimately, if you're doing something that leads you to a point where this free flowing conversation would be difficult, then yeah, you're at probably moderate intensity for you. And that's going to be different for me and for you than some people listening.
Yeah.
But 85% of our population does not hit 150 minutes of movement per week. So that's a very simple one. You can get started. Doesn't require any socioeconomic status. You can walk up a hill vigorously where you live, and you can put a backpack on and make it a little, you know what I'm saying? Like it's
Yeah.
not that difficult. Resistance training is incredibly important. If you can find a place, even the YMCA, where you can go in and, find someone, invest in an hour with a coach to like help teach you to try to lift appropriately. Like 2 to 3 days of resistance training a week is incredibly important. Longevity in a one liner to me is maintain muscle mass and strength at all costs. So like you do need to strain your system, from a hypertrophy standpoint. You can't just do Pilates and yoga forever. So that's part A. Part B is sleep. Sleep is probably the most important thing. Movement's amazing and I love it. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a good sleep routine, sleep hygiene, you're going to impact your maximum capacity. And what I mean by that is, 8 hours is nice. That's kind of the mantra everyone knows. But in reality, the data shows routine is more important than anything. Similar bedtime, similar wake time,
Oh,
Monday through Sunday. Waking up at same time ish is more important than when you go to bed if you had to choose one or the other. But physiologically speaking, we have circadian rhythms like every other living organism on the planet. And when you're shifting, you know, that rhythm, it impacts your physiology. It's a stress, and it doesn't typically benefit you. It would be considered a more of a distress than a eustress. So we tell people all the time, like, even if it's 6 hours, like, set your routine, get to bed around the same time, get up around the same time, make sure your room's dark, make sure it's cold, try to avoid screens before you go to bed, because that's going to impact your brain's ability to descend into that deep sleep state. Hydration, minimum half your body weight in ounces is a good benchmark of, mineral enhanced water per day. So simple, whatever you weigh, divide it by 2. That's how many ounces of water you should drink. The bigger you are, the more muscle mass you have, the more fluid you need. There's a reason why bodybuilders carry around those gallon jugs. It's because they got a lot of mass and they need to drink a lot of water. Protein is probably the other big one. Minimum recommendation is 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body mass. And that's probably a conservative metric, depending on who you talk to. Get a withing scale. It's $20 on Amazon, and it can give you a decent, body fat and lean body mass idea. And, even if you're not counting calories or something like that, like, at least pay attention to how much protein you're getting on a daily basis. And then there's 1,000 apps you can use. And even ChatGPT is getting to the point you can take a picture of your meal and pop it in there, and it'll give you a pretty reasonable
I
estimate
didn't
of.
realize ChatGPT
Oh,
did that too.
it's
That's
amazing.
great.
And Garmin now has a software program where, you can pair your Garmin activity with your nutrition data, and it has a very high quality, photo to data uh component. And so, like, we tell people sleep, hydration, movement, protein, those are the high level things that pretty much anyone can do on a daily basis. And then beyond that, it's a little bit more nebulous, I would say, a little bit more subjective. But
Yeah.
um, relationships, really take a look in the mirror and understand, like, what is happening in my life? Do I know myself? Am I honoring my truth in every decision that I make? How is my relationship with my partner, with my kids, with my job, with my friends, things like that? Because I have come to appreciate half of medicine, half of health is objective. The other half is very much intangible, right? And I can tell you, 6 years of doing this and 10,000 patient visits, if you are stressed because of job, family, whatever that is, it does have a physiologic impact. And there's no amount of effort that you can put in that will supersede those, daily stresses that you may or may not even realize are impacting your physiologic, mental, emotional, spiritual health. So we really encourage people to, take the time to do that self-assessment, whether it's with our team in Monarch Mind or, with a therapist, whoever they're working with, to really like dive deep and be like, am I living a life that's in alignment with really what I want to do? Or am I just doing what I'm doing because I found myself here and I'm just like, it would be too cumbersome or difficult to change? Like the data in epigenetics and things, impact on literally you at the cellular level that can be passed on for generations is real. And it's not something that you can necessarily measure in real time, but if you're not paying attention to your relationship with yourself and with others, um, there's going to be a limit to what you can actually do physically. So
No, that's very well put together. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you taking the time. We're 45 minutes or so in, and I imagine you have a busy day ahead of you. So I don't want to take up more of your time. But how can people get in touch with you? What's the best way?
yeah, Instagram's probably the easiest. So whether that's our company page at Monarch Clubs, or you can put it in the show notes.
Yeah, I'll put it all in the show notes.
Yeah, at Dr. underscore Greene with an E at the end, underscore DO, at Dr. Greene DO. I'm pretty good at getting back to people, although I have cut my Instagram time to 5 minutes a day just because it's
That's
like
probably
this
better.
this is a time suck if you're not careful.
Oh, yes. Yes, it
But yeah,
is.
I mean, like, we never wanted Monarch. I never wanted Monarch to be something that was limited to the select few that are affluent and living in LA. Like, our goal has always been to expand, and there's countless neighborhoods and communities that would benefit from what we're doing. So we have no plans on stopping. It's just, finding the spaces and then getting them open. And, it's a re-education process too, which is, most people in their 30s, 40s and beyond, they've kind of done the same thing for a long period of time. And, as long as they're not leaking fluids or vomiting or something like that, they assume that they're okay.
Yeah.
And we have an opportunity to help them, understand better, how they can live a long and high quality life.
Well, I think a lot of people don't recognize the issue until like you're vomiting or the symptoms have gotten so bad, but there are plenty of markers that they can look at long before that, which is where you guys come into play. So,
Yeah.
Dr. Greene, thank you so much for taking the time, and everybody
Yeah.
listening, thank you. We appreciate it, and we'll catch you in the next one. Thank you.
Sounds good.